You're watching Crack the Code. Boom shakalaka.
Welcome, everybody. This is Crack the Code. I am Tayamu Denku. That is Roman. And tonight, special guest, the man behind some pretty famous 80s video games, Jeff Lee in the house. What is going on, man?
Hello. Well, I'm taking a break from the U.S. versus Belgium football match tonight. I've got torn loyalties because I'm of Belgian descent. My grandparents actually, after World War I, emigrated to Wisconsin, up around Combined Locks, that area, and up near Appleton, right? And they stayed there a few years and then eventually moved to Indiana. So that's where my mother was born. But they got all kinds of cousins up there in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
A bunch of Belgians. They became farmers and such. Anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So no matter who prevails tonight, I guess I'm a winner and a loser. So
there you go, man.
Yeah.
Roman, you been paying attention to the World Cup, man?
No,
You haven't?
no.
I mean, something major happened today. I don't know if you knew, but Ronaldo played his last World Cup game because Portugal got knocked out by Spain.
Ooh. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, man. Last game of Ronaldo's World Cup days was today. But yeah. Well, Jeff, man, we stopped by your table at the Midwest Gaming Classic this year in Milwaukee. And I remember knowing that you were going to be there even before we just stopped, like before we walked by your table. I remember hearing that you were going to be there because I remember me and Roman were talking about, oh man, the graphics, the video game graphics guy and the video game guy that basically created Q Bert is going to be at the Midwest Gaming Classic, and we should probably try to stop by his table and talk to him a little bit and see what's up, and maybe get him on.
Glad you did
on this podcast, and now you are here, man.
Yeah, I am here. Earlier dates slipped by me for whatever reason, but anyway, here I am, and pleasure to be here. Thanks for asking me out, and thanks for stopping by the table. Did you get a chance to play Expert? A game I've been working on with a young fella?
No, we did not.
No, we did not.
Okay. Yeah, we went to all the trouble to put it into cabinet. Well, he's still slaving away, Spencer is, at that game, and I've got some more art to send him, but get close. So you'll have an opportunity in the future.
So that's gonna be like cabinet based, like arcade cabinet?
Well, that's the plan to do it that way initially. It's kind of a vanity project, I must admit, on my part, to do another arcade piece. I've been out of the retired from the business for quite some time, and it's been moving slow because it's a volunteer effort on Spencer's part, and it takes me much longer to get anything done. We're doing it like as sprite based, cell animation kind of pieces. So Spencer's very much into old school look, and he has an affinity for stuff from the 70s and 80s, like Polaroid cameras and fashion, big lapels and wide ties, and remarkable young man. So anyway.
Well, yeah.
It should be out there pretty soon. And of course, at some point, presumably he or someone else would can convert it into a mobile app or something. But we want to do an arcade version first. There's a couple arcades here in the Chicago area. The Galloping Ghost, if you've been there, it's about a mile from where I live. And we have Doc Mack, who is proprietor. We have a wonderful relationship. He's a great guy. He's done a lot for old relics like myself from the age. And, that place is like a museum, over 1,000 games.
Oh man,
Have you stepped in there?
I have not, man. I've only been to uh we have a couple pretty decent sized arcades in the Wisconsin area, but definitely nothing that massive, and like 1,000 games is crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So like
Where?
up your way is the Garcade, I know.
Yeah.
Um,
And there's also a
and
spot called Heroes Venture Arcade.
okay, I don't know that one. Is that in Milwaukee?
It's actually in Two Rivers between here and Green Bay.
Okay.
And the reason I know about it is um I think I briefly mentioned to you, I do music on the side, and I have played shows there. They have a music venue attached to their arcade. So there's like a 300, 350 cabinet arcade in the front area, and then there's like a music venue attached to it in the back area.
Okay.
But
Well,
yeah,
350 is a pretty massive collection as well.
oh yeah, it's pretty big. They had a room at the Midwest Gaming Classic. The Heroes
Okay.
did.
Okay. And there's Vintage Vault Arcade out near Madison. Um,
I've heard of that, but I've not
Yeah,
been.
it sounds familiar.
yeah, James Reck runs that. I've met him a few times. I've not been out to his arcade though. I only rarely get to Madison, but I should definitely make a point. Get out there, and we have a nephew living out that way. And of course, it's always fun to stop at the Mustard Museum outside of Madison. You have been there, right?
I
I've
actually,
never
yes,
even heard of
I
it.
No, you never heard of the
I
Mustard
have
Oh, it,
Museum?
it
I have
sounds interesting.
I have been to that. I have been to
Yeah,
that.
it's kind of like the Galloping Ghost arcade of mustard. It's like probably 1,000 varieties of mustard there. It's
Wow.
pretty
That's
amazing. Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
Yeah, that's neat. That's really neat.
Yeah.
So,
How do you think so? I mean, obviously, you created games back when arcades were a huge thing. Like they were in like pretty much probably every mall. There was arcades, like just regular buildings that were arcades.
right.
Now there's like still. I feel like you have to search for them, but I feel like a lot of cities still have like one spot that's like their main arcade. How does it feel to see that transition?
Well, I don't know it as a transition. I think maybe it's I think what happened in the 70s and early 80s was kind of a bubble, right? It
Hmm.
was a new thing, such a novelty, such a kind of unprecedented form of entertainment arose and caught people's attention. And then there was kids um, who loved it, and I think that's what's driven the growth many years later. Um, I don't know how old you guys are, but uh, I'm thinking of guys in their 50s, for instance, uh, and into their 60s. They were kids back then, and they were playing these games. They loved it. Um, and as that bubble burst, of course, they continued to play on platforms, Nintendo and Sega, etc. And then, of course, personal computers. I mean, it evolved in so many ways,
Yeah.
uh, and kind of dragging along some of the classic games, um, and then doing things those games never could do in terms of as graphic capabilities improved, and memory constraints became a thing of the past, and the speeds increased, and I mean, it's just amazing what's out there now today. But anyway, back to that generation. For them, some of them, it was a hobby, right? And we sometimes carry our hobbies from our youth into our adulthood. And there's a nostalgia factor. People want to kind of relive um, playing with those toys or activities of their childhood. Um, that's just a very human instinct. Um, I think that's what driven a lot of that. And some of them are collectors. I think a lot of these
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
arcade owners are collectors, and they have this big collection and they want to share it with other people. So I think those are the main things because I mean you look at Galloping Ghost and other arcades where it's you paid admission and then everything's on free play. Um, it's a different dynamic. It's not. Back then it was all quarters or tokens, right? And what defined a successful game was a game that made money.
Mm-hmm.
To justify its manufacture, you had to put a game out there and put it on test, and they would see how much money collected. And if it failed to collect the money, it didn't get manufactured because there were big factories. The center of the industry was Chicagoland. You had all the major pinball companies were here, and they jumped on that video game bandwagon. Williams, Gottlieb, the company I worked for, Bally Midway, Stern. Stern still survives as Stern Pinball.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple others, and that pinball manufacturer, again, mostly is here in the Chicago area. So the Midwest has been very important in that industry. At least, the arcade end of it and the pinball. Absolutely. So I was lucky, and a lot of other guys of my generation were lucky to maybe due to the fact that we were local boys, get jobs there. I have a brother that's 4 years younger than me, and he worked at Gottlieb in the factory. So it was like a summer job. Um, and I got my job there through a guy I knew, another local boy. He was from my hometown. Um, he started as an art director there, Richard Tracy. And we used to hang out, play music. We used to party back in the 70s. And we were both artists. And when and he made a position for himself at Gottlieb Pinball, starting up an art department because they had previously farmed it all out. There was a company called Ad Posters.
Mm.
And back when pinball backglasses and playfields and video game cabinet art was all done by mechanical means. By that, I mean, artists made color separations, and these things were screen printed onto the cabinets or onto the plexiglass. Um, and there was they did Ad Posters they worked for all the companies. There's a guy became a very good friend with David Moore, who's unfortunately passed away. He started his career at Ad Posters. And Larry Day, who had started at Ad Post, he did so many cabinets. Amazing. Larry was in town maybe a year ago and to visit his son. And I took him out to the Galloping Ghost. He had never been there. And he's walking through aisle after aisle of games. And he says, "Yeah, I did that cabinet. I did that marquee." And there must have been 30, 40 games in there that Larry had worked on. And he hadn't seen any of them because he doesn't care about games at all. He's first and foremost an artist. That's what he cares about. But he's made his living all these years as an artist. He went later into advertising, doing storyboards. and moved out to Colorado now, and he paints, does fine art and cartoons and stuff.
Hmm.
But he was another sort of a local boy. He from downstate Illinois, and a number of my colleagues were, some of them were kids who were dumpster diving behind. I think just one guy, David Bonecutter, would dumpster dive by one of the Midways or Williams buildings. He was a city boy, and he'd scavenge these electronic parts and you know the circuit boards and stuff like that, and kind of self-taught. He ended up working for us as a hardware engineer. He was just like a kid, so there was a lot of that.
Hmm. Yeah, man. Roman, you got something?
Well, yeah, just I was born in the late 70s and I was really little in the early 80s. So for me, seeing the arcades and seeing a lot of the artwork that was on those cabinets at the time jumped out a lot differently than they would anybody else, like an adult. We were talking to Paul Niemeyer, the
Oh, cool.
artist behind the Mortal Kombat logo. He
Hmm.
also did Satan's Hollow. And I remember that artwork clear as day as a child walking up to the cabinet. It was almost just like this magical experience because you're seeing these dragons and
Hmm.
just the color pop. And as a child, it's like, oh my God, I have to play that game. And it's just like it really drew kids in. All the work that you legends did back then, really, it grabbed the kids and it like, come here. And we were in the game. But I always was wondering what, the transition was between I guess it probably wasn't even a transition either, but from pinball to video games. As far as like an artist, a director in video games, was that something like the pinball industry? Did they panic, or did a lot of those artists they had embrace that and say, hey, this is something new. We can take all these things that we were learning from pinball and apply it to video games?
Well, that certainly would have worked from the factory standpoint of manufacturing cabinets, and managing the supply chain of, all the components, um, and the marketing, um, in terms of, relationships that were established with distributors and operators, the focus groups, the industry shows. There was a couple of those every year. There was the AMOA, was like, and I don't remember exactly what's American Manufacturers Operators Association or something like that. And there was another one called AOE. And those events, I think, typically held in Chicago because most of the industry was here. So that stuff carried over. Um, these companies had a lot of employees, guys in factories, the office people, the sales staffs, and all that. So they had to be turning over machines on a regular basis. Um, the machines weren't meant to last as long as they do. Like a lot of these machines in the cab in today's arcades, some of them are very old, and a lot of them have been rebuilt. I noticed one gripe about Gottlieb's power supply was that it would crap out. And probably just about every Gottlieb game out there has a new power supply because they weren't meant to be operating 50 years later. They wanted to be selling a new machine a few months later. That's how it worked with pinball. And still kind of does with pinball because it's it's easy to port, a video game to a computer, to a platform, to a phone, right? But you can't do that so much with a pinball machine. It you can't even. I mean, every pinball machine is pretty much dedicated to whatever the theme was that the designer came up with. I guess that's the beauty of pinball. Um, it was kind of maybe its Achilles heel for a while as it lost popularity. And those companies went out of business one by one. So, Gottlieb, the company I mainly worked for, closed down in 1984. And the pinball portion of the company did survive, though. Assets were bought up by one of the VPs, a guy named Gil Pollock, and he had some investors, and they moved the operation to we had a subsidiary plant in Bensonville, Illinois, an industrial park. Um, and they continued for probably maybe another 10 years or maybe more making pins. And a couple times, though, they thought, well, maybe we should try more video games. And Warren and I ended up doing at least one project for them. A game called Exterminator, which got some rave reviews, but it was a financial disaster for them. There's Doc Mack at the Galloping Ghost actually has one, and it's pretty amazing for me to see that thing. It was a very odd game. It was Warren's vision. Um, but eventually they failed, and then I think Stern had been out of business. I believe they were then revived in later years by someone Gary Stern of the original family. And now there's a few more. You just can't replace pinball, and Stern seems to be doing well. They make, I don't know how many releases they do a year, but several. So it's not like the old days, but people are buying them, and but there is a collector element too, where they're going into the hands of guys like yourself or whoever's got the money to spend anywhere from 5 to 15 grand on a pinball. You really got to be dedicated because they need a lot of maintenance, all those mechanical parts. It's kind of like collecting antique cars, right?
Yeah.
Probably helps if you can do some of the work yourself. And then there's third-party suppliers with parts for the pinballs as well as antique autos. So, anyway.
Yeah, man. So you are responsible for the Q Bert character,
Yes.
but you've worked on other games. I know the Home Alone game for Genesis, Crawl, Three Stooges, a few other ones. Is Q Bert like your favorite game you worked on, or are other ones more that stand out?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt about it. Q Bert was the most successful. It's the one people remember, even people who don't know too much about video games may know Q Bert these days because of like Wreck-It Ralph movies or Pixels. And if you I can mention that and people say, oh yeah, I've heard of it, or sometimes they haven't, uh, but often they have, or they might recognize at least the word or something like that. But I could probably mention the other games I worked on and it would just draw a blank stare because they didn't have the impact. Some of them a number of games were never manufactured. The ones that were tied into something else, like Crawl, we were owned by Columbia Pictures, and Columbia told us to do this game and have it ready by the time the movie comes out. And it was put in the hands of Matt Householder and a guy named Chris Krubel. And David Thiel did sounds. He did most of our sounds at Gottlieb, the famous Q Bert sounds, right? And Um, and I did the art, right? But based on this film, and the film was a bomb, a bad kind of bomb. And I think that our game, even though it didn't sell anywhere near as much as Q Bert did, made more money for Columbia than the film had. So,
Mm.
Wow.
uh, uh, so people might, if they're like into bad movies, like my kids are, they they might have heard of Crawl. Three Stooges, of course, everyone heard of Three Stooges. Um, again, that was a Columbia property, I thought. So when I started at Gottlieb, right off the bat, I proposed, oh, we should do a Three Stooges game. Well, because like Columbia Pictures, right? It turns out it wasn't that easy at all. The rights were owned by Moe's son-in-law. The Stooges were all dead at this point, right? And so it wasn't kind of till the end, 84 that we got Stooges out the door. And by that time, the industry was, you know, on its way down. So it didn't get much, it wasn't, a lot were not manufactured, but people have heard of the Stooges, but they might not necessarily know of the game. I think maybe there were computer games or platform games of the Stooges that were more successful.
Mm.
But again, there's one at the Galloping Ghost. And if you guys have a third colleague, or if you guys come out sometime, there'll be three of us. We can all three play it because it's a three-player game.
Oh,
Everyone
cool.
controls one Stooge.
oh, that's
And
cool.
basically, you go around and you throw pies and you slap people, hit them over the head with a hammer. So
That's the Stooges. Oh
the
yeah.
Stooges. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Roman, you got something?
Just kind of going back to pinball and how it kind of goes hand in hand in ways with video games. I was kind of curious about the cabinet for Q Bert. Did that actually use a pinball mechanism inside of the cabinet, or was that something
Yeah, for
completely new?
the knocker.
Yeah, the knocker.
Right. Yeah, that was there was a guy named Rick Ty. He was a tech who, for some reason, he hung around with the video division, and he had that idea that, oh, if you put this knocker in there when he falls off, it sounds like he's hitting the bottom. So um, Warren um, thought, oh yeah, okay, why not? We'll do that. And the management was not too keen on it because it would add a little bit of a cost, but they did agree to do that. However, there was supposed to be like a pad, like a pad between the knocker and whatever it hit that would make it, instead of a harsh sound, it would be more padded. Well, that's still pretty hard, but you get the idea. It was supposed to be more of a thump because Q Bert looks like a kind of a soft thing, right? And
Yeah.
when he hits, it shouldn't be as loud as that. But people love that. And that's one thing you don't get with the Q Bert on a console, is that because you could feel that.
Yeah.
You could feel that vibration. So yeah, that was a pinball thing. Mechanical.
Yeah, can you speak on that artwork? What inspired the Q Bert character design?
Well, the initial impetus was, of course, the cubes. And
Yeah.
I'm a fan of MC Escher, the Dutch artist who did these optical illusionary type drawings and prints. Back in my college days, we would get the black light posters and hang up on the walls with the black lights and sitting around smoking dope and stuff. And it was all very cool and trippy. And so I was fascinated with those illusions. And throughout the 70s, then I did a series of drawings, um, pen and ink drawings, colored inks, involved, I mixed those cubes and with geometric shapes and with the planets and other odd creatures and big drawings. Um, so when I started at Gottlieb, uh, we had a kind of primitive, our graphic capabilities were pretty primitive. Um, I had an Apple II initially to work with, and a guy named Jim Weiss had written the some software and interface so we could I could burn the foreground or background sprites onto a chip, and then they'd put the chip into this development system. And then finally I could see what it looked like. So I thought, well, it should be easy to do these cubes because they were like used like you made these tiles, and then you can combine the tiles and side by side, top and bottom, etc., to get different shapes depending on what you're doing. And for the background sprites were like 8 pixels by 8 pixels. So it was pretty easy. I would draw stuff freehand on paper, and I had like a light table, and I'd have grid paper, and I could overlay the grid paper on there, and then draw my little jagged lines to um, come close to what I wanted. And I had all of 16 colors to use. So if the palette allowed it, I could maybe put some midtones to maybe get rid of the jaggies, as we call them. Uh, so anyway, I did that. I had a field of these tiles, these diamonds, right, that are the cubes. And from there, um, I thought, oh, I can see, do this as a pyramid, because then you got that effect, is you're looking at this pyramid and it looks like it's going up, but at some point your eyes or your brain switches things around, and what seems to be on the top is now on the bottom. So it was a nice effect. And at this point, I wrote up a description of a game, and which I conceived as a shooting game. And so the little character with the shooter was this little round guy with a big nose, was like a cannon. And so you could be able to shoot in different directions and up and down, of course, everything off in a X pattern. At the same time, Warren had seen what I was doing with this, and there was another programmer, Kan Yamamoto, guy who did Mad Planets. He was also interested in that, but he had designed or he had a proposal for what became Mad Planets. So the management had him do that, and he gave the project to Warren, who used it to study gravity, right? And he started with the balls dropping down the cubes, and a random thing, which they go right or go left. He was working on all that. And he didn't care actually much for my notion of the guy shooting snots out of his nose at horns. He got rid of that, but we kept the nose. It was a useful indicator of what direction the guy was pointing. Of course, at this point of the development, the character had no name. It was just an element. And he was just dodging the balls, I think, at this point. The game evolved a lot. Warren learning how to program on that operating system and how to do gravity. People coming along and making suggestions, some of which he kept, some of which he tossed out. He kept some of my ideas and then thought of a lot of his own. And what was crucial was as far as making a game, when we realized this really was a game, our 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 vice president of engineering, a guy named Ron Waxman, uh, who was a very much of a character. He was some people called him Mr. 5 by 5. He was morbidly obese, and he kind of had a harsh demeanor about him. Um, he smoked these big foul cigars. This is when a lot of just people smoked in the office back then.
Mhm.
I don't know how people in our division could if they weren't smokers, how they could stand it. Because I was a smoker. Khan Yamamoto was a heavy smoker. Our hardware designer, June's, it was like a haze in there, like a fog. And anyway, Waxman would come in late at night, and Warren's putting in all these late hours, and he's like leaning behind him. And at some point, he says, "What if when he jumps on a cube, it changes colors?" So at that point, Warren thought, "Wow, that's great," and that's when we knew we had a game. Um, so it was an evolutionary process. That game never had a. I mean, I had written up a proposal, but that was just thrown out the window. The game that it became was never written up as a proposal with the elements it contained. It just evolved as a team effort. And then people like Rich Dye, you know, um, came up with the thumper idea, stuff like that. It's just
Mm.
crazy. And I had proposed that it not have a name, that it just be the swear balloon. And that's how it went on out on early test cabinets. Just a bunch of cursing symbols in a balloon. Um, our vice president, Howie Rubin, actually wanted it to go out that way as a finished product, but he was overruled because people said, well, what are people going to call it? When they tell you they want to order this game. So at this point, we had to sit down and have a meeting, brainstorming session, and come up with a name. So the Q Bert name was a group think. Again, it evolved during the course of a meeting. People threw in all kinds of ideas. I wish I had saved a list of all those names.
Yeah, I would love to hear him.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah. um, but my boss, Rich Tracy, the artist who had hired me, um, he had come up with the name Hubert for some reason, and Hubert became Cubert, Cubert, and someone thought, well, that sounds like cupboard, So at that point, we made it the letter Q with throwing the asterisk in there, which was a nod to the little swear balloon.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
But yeah, I
Uh,
do wish I had that list. So this is actually a cover from going here, my memoir, which is now out of print. And I, oh, by the way, here's where to go. I go into about every game we worked on, whether it was published or not, um, in exhausting detail. And for one game, which was never produced, in fact, it was never actually finished. And it's too bad because I really thought it was going to be as weird as Q Bert. It was programmed by Chris Krubel, who was the secondary programmer on Crawl. And Chris he had a lot of issues. He was alcoholic and he used a lot of drugs and he was just perverted. But he was hilarious. And we had a session trying to come up with a name. of that game. And I did save the list of names for that game, but you know, it's not fit for public consumption because he was such a pervert. Um, but unfortunately, I do not have the Q Bert list. I think it's too bad because I save a lot of stuff, and that one escaped me. That would have been a good. I mean, if I had known what how things are going to turn out with Q Bert, or in fact the any of the work we were doing, I would have saved a lot more stuff than I did. As it is, I did save a lot, but I can't find it in here. I don't have an index in my book.
Hmm.
I would have saved a lot more for sure because there were a lot of stuff that went by the wayside. Um, here's an item. I didn't save this, but someone else did. The Matt Householder who did Trolls, I mentioned. I'm not sure when they did this, but they went out on the factory floor and they stole this. Oops, keep going the wrong way here. That's backwards. It's a rubber stamp. I don't know what they used it for in the factory. Oops, here we go.
Oh, cool.
Oh,
Yeah, that's cool.
So it's Q Bert.
yeah.
Yeah. Logo with the character, and then it says 1983 D. Gottlieb and Company. David Gottlieb, that was the original name of the company. They From there they went to Gottlieb Amusement Games, and by the time they went out of business, they were Milestar Electronics. So yeah, when things shut down, I took pretty much all my notes. Pretty much, I did a lot of the graphics on paper back in those days. These days, when I'm doing stuff, it's pretty much all digital, So there won't be the same kind of archival material, I
Yeah.
think, for contemporary designers, unless they're making efforts to preserve their work. And I hope they're doing that. And I don't know how many of my colleagues save stuff. I did it because I'm kind of a pack rat. But like I say, if I had known, I would have been even more of a pack rat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
My wife's probably grateful that
I bet.
I didn't see that far ahead because I would have more shit here for her to get rid of when I die. So
When
yeah.
when the company closes, how does, I mean, Q Bert's um like a legacy game, like legacy, like classic game that people will remember. And then like it comes across in Wreck-It Ralph, it comes across in Pixels. How does that licensing, or how does that, do you know how that works? How does that come across those desks, and how does that happen if the company closes in the 80s?
Well, it's because, like I said, we were owned by Columbia Pictures, right?
Hmm.
Um, Columbia Pictures at the time was owned by Coca-Cola. And I don't think anyone owns Coca-Cola, right? I mean, they got stockholders, but any rate, Coke sold Columbia Pictures to Sony.
Hmm.
And that's where those rights remain, as far as I know. So they occasionally, for some of these movies, will license it out. I think Sony made Pixels, so they must have licensed it to themselves. I'm surprised they haven't done more with Q Bert, actually. because they could have taken it in more directions. And presumably they own all the other video games
Hmm.
that were produced. Most of them, of little value, right? In terms of, I mean, they haven't done anything probably with any of those games.
Yeah.
There weren't maybe cute enough characters. I mean, Mad Planet's it's kind of an esteemed game as terms of action and challenge and all that. But what do you have? You got a spaceship, a pointy spaceship, and you got some planets that get angry and make faces. But there's really obviously not a great appeal in terms of character or
Yeah.
scenario you can make out of that. I mean, you could, I suppose. I mean, look at like Brian Cohen's Rampage, right? Rampage itself is based on like King Kong and Godzilla, stuff like that, right? And so these movies beget a game, and then the game eventually, many years later, begets a movie, um, which I haven't seen, but I can imagine it's a lot of mayhem. I mean, have you guys seen the Rampage movie?
Yeah, so I saw
yeah.
that, and it's actually funny you bring that up because that was we talked to him, we had him
Mhm.
on a podcast, and he supposedly has a cameo in that movie that got cut out before the movie went out.
Okay,
So
yeah,
I
that's
was
terrible. That's
right,
terrible. They would do
isn't
that.
Yeah.
isn't
I
that
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so that's so like why so like I know Sony's like this huge corporation.
Well,
So they
before you go on with that, Diamo, um, Warren moved out to California years ago
mm,
to pursue an acting career because that's really his love is acting stage, and he's been on some TV shows and probably some bit parts. And when he learned about pixels, he talked to his agent, said, "You got to get me a cameo in this movie." And it never happened. I don't know where it broke down. Maybe the agent didn't do his job. But Warren should have been in that movie. Absolutely. I'm sorry, you were saying.
well, that's what I'm saying. Like, so you created the art for Q Bert and they never reached out to you,
No,
right?
no. I don't know what their attitude is. Um, if they are aware of our existence as creators of this property, um, it probably doesn't really matter to them, right?
Mm,
It's
yeah.
enough that they own the property. And so, um, so going back to Warren. So Warren's out in California, and for a number of years, he worked as a contractor for Sony,
Mm,
porting games to various platforms. And that's because it was like really easy work for him. It was like a no-brainer to port these games from one platform to another, and he could pursue his acting career. And he says he was at some kind of event, and there was Sony executives there, and he asked them, "So why you guys own Q Bert? Why don't you guys ever do anything with it?" And they looked at him and said, "What? We own Q Bert?" These guys had no idea that they own the property. And he said he doesn't know if it's coincidence or not, but maybe a year later, then like a cartridge came out, like a
mm,
new version of Q Bert for one of the platforms. Um, and he was trying for a number of years to get to get more done. He had some other ideas for Q Bert games, variations on theme, and he was just beating his head against the wall. I mean, he had developers lined up who could do the work, but they could never get the money or a deal out of Sony to do it. So I think he's kind of given up on that.
Mm.
Uh, one more thing about the Gottlieb properties, and I don't know how it stands with the pinball rights. I mean, I do know that there is a very litigious, is that the word I want? A lawyer who's in charge of all that, all the marketing or licensing realm of the Gottlieb pinballs. And he evidently keeps close tabs on it, but just for the pinball. So
Mm.
I don't know if he does this under license from Sony or somehow got spun off. I don't know. But
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, Roman, you got something?
You spoke about the original design for Q Bert that he shot out of his nose. Do you feel like them kind of taking that away kind of took away a certain edge to the character, or do you think that kind of gave him his charm?
I think it made a better game
Mm.
not having that, it not being a shooter. I know people love shoot 'em up games, and that was, I mean, that's why I did it. It was like such a, actually a commonplace thing to do. So yeah, the fact that he is relying on the reflexes of the player to move around, about all he could do is he can jump on a disc and
Go back to the
escape.
top.
And then if coily is too close, coily goes off the edge.
Yeah.
So uh and that's about it. I mean, he can land on Slick and Sam, anything green, and well, Slick and Sam, they're just wreckers. They just ruin things. So you get them to stop messing up your work. If you hit the green ball, everything freezes and you get to move around. But yeah, it's I think it was a good move on Warren's part.
Mm.
Um, Originally I thought the character, who wasn't even Q Bert yet, but he had the shape and the nose for it. Uh, I wanted the player to be able to switch him to a different plane, and you would only be vulnerable to stuff on your plane of existence. And when I think about that now, it's like, well, that's really complicated. And it's would people have gotten that? Probably not. I think what Warren did was just just perfect. You know, he boiled it down to an essence, a simplicity where you just got one control. And even that's a challenge for people because it's, not up and down. It's an X, it's crossways, and it befuddles people, right? Um, but that's all you got to do. You just got to move in that, and then the game makes funny noises, and yeah, and you could play for hours maybe, or not. If you fail, you just put another quarter in and keep going, trying to prove. So it was, yeah, perfect game in a lot of ways like that. And Warren deserves credit for all that. Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Jumping out of Cuba real quick, let's talk. I mean, I don't want to keep you too much longer,
Yeah,
but
sure.
let's talk about you spoke on Crawl and how that was based off of a movie that bombed.
Yeah.
And then you spoke about the Stooges game briefly, but there was a movie that didn't bomb that you did art for, the Home Alone game that went to Sega Genesis. So when you work on something like that, do you like what are the challenges of working on something like that? Because like the movie's out there, and obviously they don't know how big of a success it's going to be at the time right away, right? And then you have to work on a
Well,
game, or they
yeah,
already did know, or did you work on a game after it was already a success?
I think there'd been a Home Alone 1, right? Um, think it already was a franchise. Um, so, you got a hit movie, you got a hit video game, so you do a sequel, right? Because you've got a built-in audience or fan base for it. So, I didn't do a lot of cartridge games, but that one it was just, I didn't really have any creative input on it. It was like, here,
Do this.
do this. We need these houses. We need sidewalks and bushes. We need stairs and pictures hanging on walls. I, from what I recall, the studio that was doing it was based here in the Chicago area. Um, there was a bunch of people working there. They were doing a lot of contract work for Sega. And it was, decent money. I, just did what they wanted me to do. Like I said, very little creative input on my part. It's like, great, the work, whatever the programmer needed, and I don't even recall who would have designed the game. Yeah, there was probably a designer and then someone else, a team programming it at that point. I started another project with that company, and it did not turn out well. It turns out the principal of that company was taking the money and it was going up his nose, and people were not getting paid. Um, so yeah, that was kind of a bad experience.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, man.
Not the first time I had worked on a project and not gotten paid. That's a problem when you're a freelancer. At least with working for an outfit like Gottlieb, even though they owned everything, you get a paycheck. So, and sometimes if things went well, a bonus. So that was great when that happened.
Yeah, Roman, you got one more question?
I just, yeah, man, as just growing up in that time, and even the Q Bert cartoon was one of my favorites growing up. I always loved the character. The character just always just, I don't know, something about him just, always jumped out at me. But yeah, I just really would definitely look forward to if they would ever at least remaster the original Q Bert, but the world needs Q Bert too. We got to get it from somebody.
Yeah, yeah. Well, um, that would be great. I would love to see a Q Bert movie dedicated to Q Bert, and I hope it would be better than that TV show you love so much, because
That was great. That was awesome.
I know
That was,
you guys loved it. Your generation
oh
loved it.
man,
We
yeah.
we did not love it so much. But you know what? It it made fans. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? I'm not sure if that's a simile I want, but it was well, it did what it wanted to do. It made fans, and maybe they went out then and bought, the Atari cartridge, right? And maybe they went out and bought, the a board game or a puzzle or the any of the 100 other things
Yep,
that
I remember that.
all the other little
Oh, that's
going the
awesome.
wrong way again.
Yeah,
But
Oh,
that's
here's
awesome.
that's
here's the
tight,
here's
man.
here's the wind up Qbert.
Yeah.
He's broken now. I got one that works. Um, so after all that was done, I got married and I had 3 wonderful children, and we would go to like local Toys R Us. I think it was a Toys R Us to buy diapers, right? Buy disposable diapers and then gifts and so on. And I would see all these Q Bert figures that I think it was Kenner made them, and plus that one, and they were all in these little blister packs. There was Q Bert like as a baseball player. I don't know how he played baseball, not having arms, but I think he had a ball in his nose, so I guess he was a pitcher. So he I guess he could do that pretty well. He's skateboarding, he's roller skating, he's jogging or something like that. And there they all were in the blister packs, and they were like 79 cents each because they'd been discounted. I just swept them off the rack. I bought everything they had. Because well, I'm a guy who likes little figures and stuff. I'm a miniature war gamer, so these were right up my alley. I used to make models when I was a kid and all that. So I love that. The other Q Bert stuff, I don't think I ever bought any of it, but people have given it to me over the years. So I have quite a collection of that Q Bert crap, I call it. But it's a kick, I got to thank guys like you and the other fans for loving this piece of work that we just thought was inconsequential so many years ago. And we're grateful for that. We really are, to be remembered or to have our work remembered, and held in fond memory by you kids who have grown up into wonderful men, so and women.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, us 80s kids will always remember you guys.
Yeah.
Always.
Good. Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, thanks for having me out here.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we definitely appreciate it, man.
Maybe see you up in Milwaukee again next year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If you're at the Gaming Classic, we're definitely be there, man. So
and you know how to get a hold of me if you get down here to Galloping Ghost. I can't believe
I was gonna say if we
not Vincent the Galloping Ghost.
Roman,
you let me know.
Third player.
I live a mile away from the place, so just give me some notice.
Oh yeah.
All right, man. Definitely, man. Well, everybody, this has been Crack the Code. I am Tayamu Denku. That is Roman right there. This is Crack the Code, where we level up the conversation. Tonight we did that with Jeff Lee, and thank you very much for being a part of the podcast, man. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks. Go Belgium, go USA. One of them won.
Thank you again, Jeff.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yep.
And you're watching Crack the Code. Boom shakalaka.